Welcome to the Elk Talk Podcast with Randy Newberg and Corey Jacobson. Presented by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
The goal is, what little you and I know about elk hunting, we share with people.
I've got an elk building. It's like 120 yards away. What do I do? First off, the thought would never cross my mind when an elk's being 120 yards away to call anybody on a cell phone.
All elk?
All the time? Only elk?
Only elk.
Well, it's us having conversations, so we usually go down some rabbit holes, but
If you hunt with Corey Jacobson, you will find the landscape is full of rabbit holes. We're just going to make this up as we go.
and you look at it like, oh, that's a target-rich environment. But if you're trying to single one out, a solo target there is much easier to go into than a big group.
We record everything, so there's no BSing, no lying, no faking it with us.
Did we hit the record
I
button?
thought I forgot to hit the record button. If you want to know something about elk hunting, this probably isn't the podcast to listen to. Should we give them a list of all the other podcasts where they might learn something? Corey Jacobson, welcome to Southwest Montana, more specifically Big Sky, Montana.
Yeah, it's good. We've not got to do an in-person, in the same room, looking at each other podcast in a long time.
Man, is that because of COVID or just because we're too busy?
Probably. Well, I thought you were going to say we're too lazy or we're too. Yeah, it's been a while since we've got together and had time to sit down and podcast.
Yeah, well,
Here we
welcome.
are.
It's going to snow tonight,
I know.
June, whatever it is,
23rd or something
23rd.
like that.
Yeah.
Crazy.
All the people come here for a Total Archery Challenge, they should have brought their mucklucks and their mittens and everything else.
Weren't we talking about you and mittens last night?
Yeah, Donnie was giving me grief at the big. So Corey and me and Donnie and Marcus and a whole bunch of people got invited to a preview of Sitka's upcoming products. And they got on the topic of gloves.
Well, I brought up gloves. I told them they need a good work glove because I make firewood and I seem to go through gloves too quickly.
Yeah, and Donnie brought up, well, Randy wants mittens. It's like, no, I'm not giving any input here because I'm not a fashion and style guy. So
when you see Randy in a pair of mittens, you would agree with that statement. What are those mittens called?
Chopper mittens.
Chopper mittens.
I can't believe they weren't popular where you grew up in Idaho.
Yeah. No, I mean, we were all worried about fashion, so.
Really?
Yeah, I'm sure that was it.
The vanity has no bounds in northern Idaho, I guess. But no, if you were a kid where I grew up, or an adult even, you had multiple pairs of chopper mitts.
Man.
Yeah.
See, my parents just said go outside barehanded and learn to be tough.
Oh, really?
No, but
yeah.
but we didn't have chopper mittens, though. I mean, I saw you wearing your chopper mittens, and I'm not going to lie, there was some envy that coursed through my veins for a minute.
Envy that your fingers were cold and mine weren't?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, since I do mostly rifle hunting, you know how quickly I can just flick my hand and that chopper mitt flies off and my toasty warm fingers are running the trigger mechanism. And the other guy who's walking around with gloves is so cold because he's cut off all the circulation. He's exposed his skin to all this surface area, so he's had all this heat loss. The bull comes out and he's so cold he can't even push the fire, the safety forward to the fire position.
I've been there.
Okay.
Yep.
And so I'm dumb, but I'm not stupid. I haven't had cold hands for a long time.
About the only part of me that doesn't get cold is my liver.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty far into your body.
I
If your
know.
liver gets cold, you got problems.
Well,
Corey.
you told me that you put those body warmers, instead of the hand warmers, you get the sticky body warmers. And if you put them on your liver, it keeps you warmer. So
And
I put one on my liver, and that's the only thing that stays warm on me now is my liver.
Well, you can do it there. You can do it on your kidneys, too. But yeah, there's a lot of folks from warmer climates here for this big Total Archery Challenge shoot, and I'm sure they're thinking, "Where the heck did we?"
It's almost July, and we're getting snow.
Yeah. Oh well. I mean, maybe the pass will be closed when you have to drive home.
Yeah.
In a couple
I
days.
have to detour somewhere.
Yeah. Do you come over Lolo?
No, we came a pretty scenic way. We dropped down, came through Stanley, and over to Chalice, and then down to Arco, and.
Yeah.
I wanted to come up through Ennis, but we were pushed on time there, and that would have taken an extra 40 minutes. So.
Yeah. Well, when you're traveling with the family, the scenic route is, you can just say, "Hey, this is a vacation, kids."
I came with the two youngest teenagers, and they just slept the whole time. So I had to wake them up when we saw a brand new antelope fawn next to the road, cool. Little tiny bugger, and so I woke them up to see that. But other than that, they slept. They do a good job of sleeping.
Yeah. Well, if it's like my wife, we will drive 7 hours to go walleye fishing, and she sleeps the whole way. And we get there, and I'm just white knuckle from driving these state highways, towing this big boat, and she'll look around like, "Oh, that's always such a nice ride to here." You haven't seen 5 miles of it, but.
Wake up and see one view, and it's like, oh, it's such a pretty drive here. It's like, you missed the real pretty part.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, well. But, it's fun to be together, visiting about all this stuff again. Today, was today the first day of archery? Total Archery Challenge?
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people here, and they ask lots of questions.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I have good answers for most of them.
Where were you hanging out most of the day?
I was at the outdoor class booth most of the day, but I was at Leupold, at Sitka, at Peaks, at RMEF. But I got cornered in the outdoor class booth because that's where I've stashed my 300 dilly bars. So if you wondered why the big line was at outdoor class.
Yeah.
Well, right now, there's the big deal going on where they're giving away a bow if you sign up at this event, and they give you a discount, and you get a dilly bar.
Wow.
So
what's the incentive? Is it the bow, the discount, or the dilly bar?
I was thinking it's because they get your University of Elk Hunting course there.
Yeah.
That would be the incentive.
I saw a lot of people walking around with dilly bars.
I know. It was funny how many people said, "Oh, I just kind of followed the trail of dilly bars to find where I could get one."
Or to find Randy.
Yeah. And a guy who works at Big Sky Resort saw a little kid and said, "Where'd you get the dilly bar?" And the kid says, $2, and I'll tell you.
That is a young man who's going to be successful.
Yeah, exactly. So it's fun, though, because you get a lot of questions. We get all these viewer questions or listener questions via the Elk Talk Podcast website. But when you're in person, you can get into a lot more detail about the exact scenario and setup and everything else. And it's always interesting to have people think we have all the answers. And when you tell them, well, it depends. I sometimes feel like I see a letdown, and I'm like, wait a second, you were supposed to have this answer for me.
You mean there's not a cut and dry way to do this? Well, and it's funny because when people send in the emails with questions, they ask a question and we answer it.
Right.
And they aren't there to ask a follow-up question. When they're in person, it's like, okay, but what about this? And then how do you do this? And it just leads to, I mean, you think we go down rabbit holes. When they have us in person cornered in a booth like that, it's, we have to make up a lot of stuff.
The other good part is the great feedback we get of how many people listen to this podcast, and I'm like, please keep doing it and keep going down the rabbit hole. That's the funny part. That's the fun stuff. We never know what you guys are going to talk about. It's
neither do we.
Neither we.
That's I still tell people, I can't believe people listen to Randy and I just sit there and talk. Like, if we had a syllabus or some kind of a structured curriculum or something, maybe we could fool people into knowing what we're talking about. But, man, us just sitting here talking, it's got to be pretty evident we don't know what we're doing.
Well, one of the questions that came in via email And I was going to ask you this question anyhow for my own personal interest, but someone wants to know when your Colorado elk hunt from last year is coming out.
Yeah, that's been
because it didn't make the Destination Elk series that aired this winter.
No, we our Destination Elk, we put that together, but the Colorado film, I reached out to a good friend of mine, Ben Potter. Mm-hmm. And Ben worked with us on The Linguist, and he was the camera guy and the editor. Kana Outdoors is his company, and we had always talked, man, we need to do this again, because that year Ben had never been on an elk hunt before in 2016, and since then the elk hunting fire has been lit and fueled, and it's a wildfire for Ben now, and he's been out multiple states, multiple times, and succeeded as an elk hunter. So it's kind of cool. So I just reached out and said, hey, I've got this tag. It's taken 18 years to draw it, and it'd be awesome if we could team up and do something. And so he does a lot of work with Sitka on their Sitka hunts and Sitka films. And so we approached them and worked it out so Ben could go and film it and edit it, and Sitka's going to publish it. So we actually just finished filming a little bit of B-roll stuff and some voiceover stuff last week, and kind of have a plan. I wouldn't say it's a solid plan, but if you're in the Bozeman area, or you want to be in the Bozeman area in mid-August, I'll be doing an event at the Sitka Depot.
Cool.
An elk hunting event on August 12th. And the plan right now is I think we're going to premiere the film there, and then it'll be in person or online to be able to watch if you can't make it in person a day or two after that. So mid-August is what it's looking like.
And then for the people who can't make it to the Sitka Depot on that Saturday, where else is it going to be on?
I think it'll be on the Elk 101 YouTube channel.
Okay.
After that.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it.
So that, and again, subject to change. I literally today, this afternoon, got my first look at the draft of it, and we've packed a lot of elk action into a short film. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's a question then that we can check off the list. I don't have to ask it because now a viewer asked it.
Yep.
So.
And we do get a handful of emails about every day on it because, we talked about it. I'd waited 18 years to draw it, and then in Destination Elk, I said, hey, stay tuned. We've got the Colorado hunt coming. And I think initially we'd talked like April, May time frame of releasing it. But
it is interesting when people hear that you've done this hunt or we've done that hunt or whatever. When am I going to see this?
Yeah.
I mean, I got that question today from quite a few people. I'm like, man, you guys pay close attention. I don't know. Let me think about
I forgot I even did that hunt. We do have to put out a film still, don't we?
Yeah. So it's fun, though, that people are that interested and they want to see and they hopefully pick up a little tidbit and learn a little something here or there. I'm impatiently waiting for your friends over at Idaho Game and Fish to do the deer, elk, and pronghorn draw. When they doing that?
I would have thought, because today is the 23rd, Friday, June 23rd, as we're sitting here recording this, and they usually do it on a Friday, just so they don't have to answer a bunch of questions for the next 2 days when people are like, why didn't I draw? Or, are you sure I'm unsuccessful? But they've been a little slower the last few years. I'm guessing it's going to be next week, which they say they'll send them out by, I think, July 9th is the date that they say. But it's usually in June. I don't think they've ever made it into July. But my guess is it'll be next week, the last week of June.
This is my year.
This is your year?
Yeah.
Yep.
In my 20, whatever, I think I've got 25 or 26 years applying in Idaho.
Yeah. How many points do you have?
0. Ooh. Thank goodness, because you don't have a point system. But I've never drawn a limited entry tag other than one time, or a controlled hunt, you guys call them.
Yeah.
I applied for the wrong hunt and I drew. I could see why it was so easy to draw. When I got there, it's like, boy, there's a lot of people here. Oh, and there's a youth hunt going on, and there's it's like, and that was for a deer hunt. So Yeah, I've been quite a donor to your program down there in Idaho, so I'm thinking sooner or later you guys are gonna, cough up a little tag action my way here.
Every year people draw tags, so and people I know, so I know that they actually give out tags, but they are not very selfless with those. They seem to be a bit stingy.
Well, it's kind of my last hurrah, Everything else is it. Oh, it's too late now for people to know, but today was the deadline for the Wyoming leftover tags.
I know, and they had
a lot.
A lot.
I was surprised.
Yeah.
And did you notice the unit where the 4 hunters from Missouri did the corner crossing? There were a lot of any elk tags still left over.
Really?
I thought with all the news about the corner crossing and stuff that everybody would be applying there because it's great elk hunting if you got a stepladder and a good attorney.
What was the guy wanting? $7 million or something? He said like he lost out on that much revenue from them stepping over the corner there.
Yeah, and that this is a tangent to that, but the landowner, if he's going to appeal this because he lost his summary judgment about 3 weeks ago, I think he has until next Friday, the 30th. To file an appeal with the 10th Circuit and decide what he's going to do there. So
with that summary judgment saying that they didn't violate anything, does that open the door that anybody can take a stepladder now, and does it make it legal?
That's a good question. A lot of attorneys are still arguing that.
Yeah.
I did a podcast on it on the Hunt Talk Radio podcast, had Nick and Tom, 2 attorneys, and they're like, it applies to those facts and circumstances, but it's, that's the term they use, it's persuasive, but not precedential. Mm-hmm. That if it gets to the next level, it is precedent.
Yeah.
At least for the 10th Circuit, which includes Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, Oklahoma, I think maybe Kansas and Nebraska. I know the Wyoming, Colorado, and Utah are the mountain states that are part of it. So
if 10th Circuit gets a summary judgment or a ruling in favor of those defendants,
right,
then it would be precedent. You could go and know that you would win a future battle based on that decision.
In the geography of the 10th Circuit.
Yeah.
Now, Montana, we're in the 9th Circuit. Idaho, you're in the 9th Circuit.
Yeah.
Who knows what those, you'd get your federal judge within the federal district, but then if you wanted to appeal, you go to the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco. And the 9th Circuit is known as kind of the strange ducks of the judicial circuit, or circuits. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
I bet there's a lot of people buying stepladders right now, though.
Well, maybe there's a business opportunity there, Corey.
Hunting stepladder, lightweight carbon fiber stepladders.
There you go.
The perfect height to get over a 5-strand barbed wire fence.
Yeah, I was the flip side of it. A guy named Dave Pekala sent me an email. He's like, sounds to me like hunters should just buy liability insurance or umbrella insurance for a cheap dollar amount.
Yep.
And then if you get sued, just say, the attorneys for the insurance company are the ones.
Let them fight it.
Yeah. I'm like, I wonder if that's how that works. I never thought. I have an umbrella policy. I never thought about it.
Let's try it. You can be the guinea pig. I'll hold the ladder.
Oh, there you go.
You climb over.
One of the people had a question. Wanted to know if we've ever done a drop camp. I never have. Have you?
I don't think I have. No. Yeah. I've looked into them a bunch, but
and they're wondering about the pros or cons. And I really don't know. I guess my first the pro I would see is okay. All the gear's there. You just like, you're out there and they usually have a wall tent and it's like, okay, he's probably not going to set it up in some area with no elk because he wants repeat customers. But the flip side of that is if he's running tons of people through there, it could get shot, quote unquote, shot out.
Yeah.
So
not only that, and my hesitation and kind of the drawback that's ever kept me from doing it is if you have an outfitter that's doing drop camp hunts, they're probably also doing guided hunts. I mean,
Right.
there aren't very many outfitters that would just do drop camp hunts only.
Right.
And with that being the case, if you are going out with somebody and taking them hunting as an outfitter on a guided hunt, you're probably going to go to the better areas, which means that if an outfitter's doing drop camp hunts, he's probably not taking those clients into the prime areas.
Probably true.
And that's not a dissuasion for anybody not to do it. The idea of somebody packing, I mean, I would love to team up with an outfitter and say, hey, if we're 9 miles back in and you've got a camp in this area, could we get a hold of you and have you come pack our elk out on your horses if you're coming back into here anyway? Mm-hmm. That would be appealing for sure.
That would be appealing, I think, to everybody.
Yeah.
And
so I'd probably lean more towards that than doing an actual drop camp.
Another person said, hey, where I come in every morning, the elk are down below me. How do I?
Oh, when he's hunting, I was thinking when he comes into the office every morning, the elk are down below. I'm like, well, okay, you got your scouting done.
Yeah, he parks. Sounds like he parks at a trailhead, walks out somewhere, and the elk are always down. I don't know if it's in a canyon or in a drainage or whatever. He's like, how do you hunt them in the morning?
Yeah. And that's one of the things we talk about is we start in the bottom, but we're hiking up. Mm-hmm. And so what happens when you get up on a ridge and you bugle off the backside and elk answers down below you first thing in the morning. And it's always just a matter of playing the wind. I mean, if an elk answers 200 yards right below you on the same hillside, you probably don't have a chance.
Yeah.
But hopefully he answers down below you on the other side of the draw on a finger ridge, and you've got a little bit of a barrier there with that draw that's pulling your wind down and away from him. So, I mean, you have to plan the approach and the attack based on the wind, and hopefully, again, if he's directly below you and he answers right then the first time, it's probably over. Not much you can do. But if you're up on a ridge top and you're hiking that ridge and you're bugling down into the canyon, typically you've got finger ridges you can use as that wind's going down. That finger ridge is going to be kind of a buffer and a divider. If you can get on one side of it and the elk's on the other, you can keep the wind from going to the elk.
Yeah. Well, hunting with you, people ask me, well, Randy, you do mostly rifle hunting, you do some archery hunting. What have you learned most archery hunting with Corey? What I have learned is that there is no mountain too tall, no distance too far that Corey won't travel to make sure the wind's perfect.
That's, if I'm going to hike 3,000 vertical feet and spend half the day getting there, hoping that there's an elk there, when I get there and get the elk bugling, I don't want to blow him out first thing. Like I want to give myself at least a little bit of a chance. And if you aren't paying attention to the wind and using it in everything you do and every plan you make, you're just setting yourself up to fail.
Yeah. I'll admit that before I started following you around a little bit in archery seasons, I tried to cheat the wind. I thought, it's just, it's only like 4 seconds I'll be across this one funnel where the wind seems to. Well, guess what?
Yep.
4 seconds is 4 seconds too many.
You pee in the pool and there's pee in the whole pool. And
that's a visual that I'm sure the audience is like, Corey, I didn't know.
The scent spreads just like pee in a pool.
Oh, man. So another guy writes us and says, I'm going to rephrase his question. He says, I don't get a lot of encounters, so I always struggle and worry about this, but when's the right time to draw? Because I'm afraid I could draw too early, draw too late.
We should have Donnie on here to answer that. Donnie, when we first started hunting together, the second that he thought the elk was coming close, he would draw back.
Oh, really?
And I would see him draw, and I'm like, Donnie, he's still 200 yards away. Donnie would hold his bow for like a minute and a half before we'd even see the elk, and then he couldn't let down without the elk seeing him. And I'm like, okay, here's what we're going to do. You wait until you see the elk inside 100 yards, and then draw. And he's like, well, it's going to see me. And so, I mean, it's a tough one because if you wait too long, the elk's there. They seem to have that sixth sense. So when they walk out, they get into that shooting lane, and if you haven't drawn, they just seem to know something's up, and they start looking.
Yeah.
And so that's too late. You don't want to wait till then. You don't want to wait until the elk is in your shooting lane. And a lot of my setups are picked based on, here's where I think the elk's going to come, and I'm going to get a shot. Mm-hmm. but I need to make sure I've got areas where I can draw. So he's going to have to come behind that big tree, or he's going to have to go behind that brush pile, and that's going to give me a chance to draw. So I don't know that there's a too early or too late. There definitely is a too early and too late. I don't know if there's a black and white answer.
Yeah.
I just make sure that as that elk's coming in, I know where I'm going to have shots at him, and I also know where I'm going to have opportunities to make a little bit of movement. And that's usually if he goes out of sight, because if I can see his head, he can see every move I make.
Right.
So I can't draw my bow when I can see his head. So I have to have an obstruction that's going to obstruct his head from my vision. And when that happens, I have to draw, and it has to be smooth, and it has to be quick, and not any noise or movement. But I can't draw when he's at 120 yards because elk will stop and rake a tree for 4 minutes.
Right.
And, I like to draw and hold for less than 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So it's when he gets close to that shooting lane when I want to draw.
Yeah. Huh. Well, that is so situation specific
and terrain specific and.
Yeah. Well, I hope I got to think that through when one comes walking through my shooting lane this hunting season.
That's the best feeling ever. Do I draw now? Do I draw now? Because it's close. It's just about to happen when you're thinking about when you need to draw.
No, I thought that was a good question because I think it's where you get like so close and you're right there, and here he is, and do you freeze up because you're doubting, oh, it's too early or it's too late, or do you do it too early or too late? And so,
and usually when you think I'm not going to draw because it's too early, by then it's too late.
So, do you have like a mental checklist? And this is the reason these are so focused at you, Corey, is because they're mostly archery specific, right? I mean, when I'm rifle hunting, it's not like I got to worry about a lot of this stuff.
There's just a lot on the checklist when you're archery hunting.
So that checklist, when you say, okay, he's coming, I can tell he's getting closer, I'm going to go set up over here, or have my shooter go set up over here, I'm going to call. Do you have like a mental checklist of things that are really rapidly going through your head when you're assessing? And it's like, I mean, there's probably never the perfect place. So it's like, what's the best of the imperfect setups?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the setup is critical. And that's what there was a couple of guys came up to me today from Idaho, and they were talking, and they said, we've had opportunities, we've missed a shot, but we've never killed an elk. What's the number one piece of advice? And that's always the hardest thing. Somebody says, what's the number one piece of advice for a new hunter? What's the number one piece of advice for someone who's hunted but never killed an elk? Because it's tough. I mean, it is situational. I could tell you, you've got to obey the wind, but you go out there and you haven't shot your bow all year and you miss a 20-yard chip shot. Well, shooting your bow would have been the most important advice I could give you. So,
yeah.
But I told them, choosing your setups wisely. The reason you're getting so many encounters but not getting shot opportunities is the setup. That elk's coming to 100 or 120 yards, and you aren't getting him inside 40 yards. It's that last 80 yards. It's always the hard part. So the setup, two-person with a caller and shooter, the caller back behind has got to see where the shooter is and where the shooter's lanes are, and then he's got to get hidden from that, so the elk has to come into that lane before he can see where the caller's calling from. Because if he gets 80 yards out and he can see the tree that the caller's hiding behind and calling from, he's not coming any closer unless he sees an elk.
Right.
So you want to hide down over a little rise or behind some brush where that elk has to come into the shooting lane before he can get a visual. So I mean, that setup, that's part of the setup. The other part is the elk has to be comfortable. When he's coming in, he has to be comfortable. He's not going to probably bury his head down on the ground to climb through a big mass of alders because he can't hear, he can't see, and all of a sudden he's going to step out and put himself in danger. So he's not going to come through that. He's not going to walk across a wide open meadow for 100 yards in the middle of the day because he's exposed. So I mean, just all these little things. When I'm looking, I'm like, if I was an elk and I've seen enough of them come into setups, I'm saying there's a perfect little bench right there. I bet he walks right off that hillside on that game trail, comes right to that bench, and he's going to stop right there and look over the hill to see if he can see the caller. As the shooter, I need to get right here so I'm able to shoot on that trail as he's coming down. So I do analyze probably more than anything else that setup of where is the elk most likely to come in, where am I most likely to get a shot at him, and then I say, caller needs to be over here, shooter needs to be here. Here's where we're trying to bring the elk into. So, I mean, there is a strategy. I'm trying as the caller to direct that elk into a very specific place.
Right.
And I have to know the elk has to be comfortable coming into it if I want to have any chance.
Yeah. As the shooter, and this is just my experience, is once you set up and that bull is now at 60 yards, you're screwed. You can't be moving.
Yeah.
But are there situations where?
Not when it's that close.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
And that's the hard part is once I set up as a shooter, I don't move unless I feel the elk is moving away.
Yeah.
Like, or if he, there may be a time where he comes into 60 yards and he turns quartering away from me and starts raking a tree. I might say, I can get another 10 yards closer and get up to that next tree. He's making noise. And so I might take one step and look. Okay, he's not looking. I'll take another step. And if I can get a tree in between me and him, I'll be even more bold in closing the distance. But that's really the only time as a shooter I'm moving is if he hangs up and starts raking or something where I feel I can make some movement and get away with it.
Yeah.
If he's just standing there scanning, I can't even draw my bow. I can't do anything.
Which is what makes it so different than my rifle hunting that I mostly do is, okay, he's 200 yards over there raking a tree, not willing to come any further. Bad day for you, pal.
Yeah, exactly. You shouldn't have stopped and raked that tree. That's exactly what I wanted you to do.
Right. So a lot of today I got the question, would you rather archery hunt or would you rather rifle hunt? And my answer was yes. If I want to put meat in the freezer, which I love to do, I'm going to rifle hunt. But if I want to have fun, I mean like the excitement level to a degree that is, I don't know, maybe I can replicate it in rifle season, but
it's tough.
I get excited. I have fun. It's a blast rifle hunting them. But beyond question, for someone as inept as me, archery is way more difficult, way more challenging, which makes it way more fun in a lot of ways. And I think that's why so many elk hunters gravitate towards archery hunting.
I really think it's like the difference between checkers and chess.
Yeah.
It's fun to beat somebody. It's fun to play the game, but chess takes a lot more strategy, a lot more thinking. And because of that, when it comes together, I think, I wouldn't say it's more rewarding, but it's a different kind of rewarding.
Right. For every elk you encounter with a rifle, you're going to have fewer of them that get out of your grasp than with a bow.
And if you don't, you probably need to spend more time at the rifle shooting range because,
And when I do seminars or even in my course on outdoor class, I said, I think a bull elk in a rifle hunt is one of the easier animals to kill. They're hard to find and locate. But once you find and locate it, it's not that hard to get your tag on them.
Yep.
Once you've found them, you're 95% of the way there. Whereas in archery, no,
you found them. That's the easy part.
Yeah.
How do you find them? I just bugle and they answer. They're right there. I know right where they are. And the chances of killing one, that's pretty low.
Yeah. Well, it's for me as much as most of my hunting is with a rifle. I cannot replicate the excitement and the shakes and jitters I get when I can hear the limbs snapping and the leaves crunching as this bull is getting closer, and then he bugles. It's like, oh my gosh.
You can feel it.
Yeah.
And even rifle hunting, when a bull bugles at 300 yards away and then he steps out in the open and you shoot him, it's exciting.
Yeah.
But man, that in your face, 20, 30 yards away, the bull bugles, you're right there in his bubble. And it's just a next level. And like I say, it's not like I don't ever want to say that archery is more rewarding than rifle or that it's harder or anything, because that compares the two and it makes somebody that rifle hunts feel like, archery hunting, they think they're elite. But it's just a different kind of rewarding. Like it's when you said if I needed to put meat in the freezer, I'm going rifle hunting, my thought was exactly opposite.
Really?
If I want to put meat in the freezer, I'm going bow hunting.
Huh.
And it's because I'm more confident in locating the elk. Bow hunting during the rut, I struggle to locate bull elk in the post rut. Like that's my week. I know they're there, but I just struggle. I think it's a patience thing. Yeah. I just want to move until I see one instead of being smart and saying he's here. I'm going to sit and wait until he pops out.
Yeah. Huh.
But yeah, if I wanted to put meat in the freezer, I'd be like, you put me out in the mountains on September 15th with a bow, and I will find an elk, and I'll find a way to kill him. You put me out there November, 1st, and it's like, I'll go find a track, I guess, and follow it, and hope I run into it. And
that's interesting that you say that, because I think if you give me a tag in November, I'm gonna find a bull.
Yeah,
it's just, and that's what I do most of. So I guess. Yeah.
Well, I think that just that settles it. You need to come and elk hunt with me in November.
Well,
and show me how to find bull elk.
Where are you going to hunt elk in November?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Every time I get a tag in November, you're like, "Oh, I'm busy. I've got a late tag in Arizona."
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But if the tag I applied for in Idaho this year is a November rifle hunt. So if I draw, you should just come along.
I need to find out how to. But I mean, we're talking now a controlled hunt.
Yeah,
they're probably going to be like elk behind every tree, so easy to find.
Okay, well, come to Montana and hunt in November.
I have, yeah.
Okay.
I've experienced Randy's November Montana hunting before. Yeah, Corey, go up this canyon here. And by the way, I should draw a mountain goat tag next year. So while you're traipsing through the 4 feet of snow, if you see any big billies, let me know. Yeah. Didn't find any elk, but we did see some really nice mountain goats.
Hey, I might look dumb, but maybe I'm not quite that dumb. But before we turned on the mics, we're talking about e-scouting. And and then we turned on the mics right after I said, for me, e-scouting is really critical for me as someone who rifle hunts. And maybe it should be in my archery hunts, but I'll admit, I don't do as much of it for my archery hunts as I do my rifle hunts.
Yeah.
Is that?
Well, yeah. And I think, it goes right back to what we just talked about. Finding elk is easier in September than it is in November for me.
Yeah, I think it is too for me, just because
they're
vocal, they're moving.
I walk out on a ridge, I bugle. If one answers, there's one there.
Yeah.
If one doesn't answer, in my mind, there's not one there, and I need to go somewhere else. So, I find them with a bugle tube. So, you've got e-scouting, you've got boots on the ground scouting, and then you've got scouting during the season. Yeah. And I think all three of them help you find elk. Mm-hmm. For me, for archery season, if I had to pick just one, it would be give me a bugle tube during the hunt and let me just go find the elk then.
Yeah.
Because if you find them middle of July, boots on the ground, you find a big herd of elk, they might not be there in 6 weeks or 8 weeks. There's a good chance they won't be.
Yep.
E-scouting, you aren't going to find elk. You're going to find areas. So I think for me, I use e-scouting more to find backup areas. It's like, this is the area I want to hunt. If there's no elk there, here's an area that looks good because it has, feed, it has water, it has north-facing slopes to bed on. So I'm just looking for those elements, and I've got 8 different spots that I've e-scouted, one for every day. So if I get in there and there's no elk, I know where I'm going, because if you don't know where you're going, you won't end up anywhere.
Yeah.
And you'll keep doing the same thing, going, well, I don't know where to go, so we'll just hunt here again tomorrow, and it's not going to work out. So I use e-scouting for backup areas. If I go physically scouting, I'm not necessarily looking for elk. I'm looking for signs of previous ruts. I'm looking for rubs, looking for wallows. I'm looking for sign that the elk are there in September. And if they happen to be there right then too, that's an added bonus.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say my e-scouting is about developing as many possibilities as I can find, trying to prioritize them and rank them. Day one, I want 2 or 3 spots. If I don't see anything, okay, I'm going to move off, and another spot. Day 2 will be a morning spot, maybe an afternoon and an evening spot. The other thing I use e-scouting for is my anticipation of hunting pressure. Like this last week, Go Hunt came out with historical imagery, and a lot of people emailed me or like, so how do you use historical imagery?
Yeah.
And we're launching a video on one way I use it is in the example that you'll see screenshots of this is there's some historical imagery from 2020 or 2019 in a really arid state like Arizona or New Mexico. Well, it was a really bad drought year in 2019, especially in 2020. Well, now they're like 18 months past that drought year. So I don't want to be looking at drought year static imagery
On a year like this where it's not a drought year.
Right. So you're like this, there's water spread, every little water hole, even the little ones have water in them.
Yep.
So I go and I look at this area. I'm like, well, it's not quite as wet as 2023 is, but 2015 was a pretty wet year. So I go and grab historical imagery from 2015 and I'm like, oh, wow, there's a lot more water out there than it shows in this. So if I didn't have access to historical imagery and I just stuck with whatever static image that gave me, it still is some helpful to have, aerial satellite imagery. But if everyone is stuck with this drought year imagery, that they're all going to be on those 4 water holes that show up.
Yep.
But because I've been able to now do a comparison, I know of 14 water holes
that are closer to the area you've identified as their bedding area.
Right.
That's most likely going to be the easiest place for the elk to go in water, and it's more secluded.
Right.
And that makes a lot more sense if there's water there. If there's not water there, then the 4 other areas might be the ones that everybody's concentrated on. But
And the flip side of that could be if you were going and hunting there in the bad drought year of 2020, but your historical imagery was all stuck in 2015. You're like, oh, there's water everywhere here.
Yeah.
You and all the other guys show up, and most of your water sources are gone.
Your 6 backup plans for water are all empty. Now what do you do?
Yeah. So that's why historical imagery without giving it context isn't of much value. But if you use the drought monitor and rain maps and all these other SnowTel sites, historical imagery gets to be a pretty useful tool, at least for me.
Yep.
So anyhow, shameless plug. If you want to go check it out, the e-scouting tools at Go Hunt and their maps have that now. And Elk Talk is a promo code that'll put $50 a credit in your gear shop. Is that?
Yeah.
That's what they get.
$50 of free money.
Mad money if you go to Insider and sign up. So when you sign up for Insider at Go Hunt, you get all those e-scouting tools, maps, draws, the whole thing. Anyhow, that's one example that a guy was asking me today, actually. He's like, hey, I saw this and I know you use it. I don't get why it's a big deal. So I just walked through that example. He's like, ooh, I never thought about that. I said, other times I'll look at places that, they were logged in 2010. Well, they might have grown up a pretty good chunk by 2022. If my imagery is stuck at 2016, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's still huntable. Well, then I show up there and it's lodgepole or it's reproduction or alder that's over my head. It's like, this wasn't a good idea.
Or if you're looking only at fire maps and you see, oh, this burned in 2006, it's probably all grown back up now, and I wonder what it looks like. And you don't have historical imagery, and you show up there and it still looks like the moon because it's never grown back.
Yeah.
It's just that historical imagery helps you see how have the fires reacted, how's the area recovered after a fire, what's the area look like on a dry year versus a wet year. It just gives you a clearer picture that's easier to compare to what you're going to see when you go in there today versus just guessing that, well, at one point in time it looked like this.
Yeah. Well, I just get to thinking about how many tools we have at our disposal, and each of them by themselves may not solve all your answers, but you start adding some of these together, and it's like, man, this is so much easier than it was 20 years ago.
This is like investigator level. You know, we've got our basements with yarn going from picture to picture and little pins on it, and we're trying to connect all these dots with all these different tools, and yeah, we're like forensic investigators here.
Yeah.
All that. My wife comes in and looks at it, and she shakes her head, and she's like, you know, there's elk down in the field right now, right? I'm like, yeah, but they won't be there in 3 weeks. Like, how do you know? And, you know, it's just, we take it to the next level. But look at all the tools we have that 30 years ago, we didn't have any of these.
Right.
We didn't even have, you know, anything but a compass.
Yeah.
A compass and a box of matches. And now we're sitting there, you know, we can't even, we've got 3 digital devices now to get us through the woods and help us monitor what the elk are doing and checking trail cameras, and we still aren't any better as hunters than we were. But it makes it more fun.
It does. And, you know, a lot of people have asked me, okay, Randy, you've been hunting for however many decades. What have been the biggest game changers? And I think a lot of them expect me to say something like, oh, you know, the equipment technology like rifles and bows. And that has changed a lot. But for me, when Google Earth came out, my hunting world, the expansion of where my mind would now go, just I can't even quantify, because before it was always getting Forest Service maps or BLM maps, and that's all I had. And now I could sit at a laptop
and see it in 3D.
Yeah, I could fly over these. I'm like, whew. And then all of our thoughts are like, man, too bad you didn't know who owned all that land down there. And then along comes surface ownership maps layered on top of that. And at the time, it's like, well, I got to get all this on a little micro SD and haul it out on my GPS, blah, 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 blah. And now all of that stuff has come to the GPS on our cell phones.
In the palm of your hands.
Yeah.
And we get frustrated because we have to wait a second and a half for it to load. It's so slow. Come on.
So I would say, of all the things in my hunting life that have revolutionized my hunting, but also other people's hunting, it's that. Because what used to be honey, quote unquote, if you want to call them honey holes, are no longer honey holes to someone who's well versed in how to use this technology.
Yep.
There are no rocks unturned. There are no corners of the unit that someone hasn't been investigating.
Totally.
And I mean, some people bemoan technology. I'm really glad we have those things.
Yeah.
One, I get to waste lots of time e-scouting. Today, Marcus was here, and someone asked us how much time we spend e-scouting versus scouting, or versus hunting. And I said, I probably spend as much time e-scouting, or whatever you want to call it, you know, researching, plus trying to put the research of the forage and the time of year and the hunting pressure and the locations. I told them I spend as many days doing that as I do actually hunting that tag.
Yep.
And they just kind of looked at me like, what?
And if you spend more time, you might even fill your tag on day 2. So you spend less time hunting. And there's an equation there, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I'm sure some people are like, well, Newberg, the rest of us have a life. Okay. Come on. And okay. I get that.
Yeah.
But it keeps me out of trouble. You know, I don't have many vices anymore, Corey, other than I just probably hunt too much. And I
think our wives probably think we don't hunt enough. They're like, he's home again.
Yeah.
Don't you have somewhere to go? Isn't there a hunt open right now?
Yeah. Well, that's my life. Kim looked at the calendar for the upcoming 10 days, because last week was my first week I wasn't on the road. Last weekend. First week I wasn't on the road doing something, volunteering or otherwise, for multiple weeks. So we went fishing, and we come home and she looks at the calendar. She says, I looked at your calendar. All you're doing is volunteering and then being at this thing and being at that thing. I'm going to Oregon for 2 weeks. So today she loaded up the car, drove off to Oregon to see her mom.
Man.
So she's like, well, if you won't get out of my hair,
she's not waiting for hunting
season.
Used to be my wife could wait till hunting season. Now she needs to make up vacations to get away from me.
They put up with us.
That's right.
Yeah, we're lucky. So, what other kind of questions have you got while you've been here?
What's our plans for this fall?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the one I was get. Draw any tags? I'm like, yeah, I draw a couple, but not a lot. For me this year, I've got 3 sweepstakes hunts I'm trying to get off the books.
You'll be busy.
Yeah. And I
saw you're doing another giveaway.
Yeah. I don't know if this podcast will get published through the end of June 30th of 2023. If you sign up using, I hate to cheat you on this, but you got to use promo code Randy, not promo code Elk Talk.
Yeah,
but
doesn't cheat me.
At Outdoor Class or at Go Hunt for Insider, if you use promo code Randy, you get in the draw
to go on
a Nevada pronghorn hunt
with
me.
Wow.
I'm not hunting, but the winner gets to hunt, and so we're gonna do that. And then we have the sweepstakes winner. I'm going to Kentucky with him.
Yep.
In early October, and then we have the sweepstakes winner who 2 years ago won, but he hasn't been able to draw a tag. And so he's from your state, Idaho. And
is that an elk hunt?
Yeah. The Kentucky one and the Idaho guy, those are both elk hunts. So I'm trying to get all of those, and I want to do them because I have a ton of fun with these people. I get to meet new people and get to do fun stuff. And so I don't need that many tags this year.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be helping other people. And
well, I hope you draw your Idaho tag in November so I can be a third wheel and come learn how to find elk.
We're bringing llamas if I draw.
Ooh. I know how to feed llamas.
Yeah. You feed the llamas, we'll bring like a Cadillac camp.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I was at the Peaks booth today talking to them about tents and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting to an age where a Cadillac camp is sounding better and better. Mm-hmm. We're talking about stoves and tents and
those are nice things. And when you have llamas,
you don't have to carry it.
No. So, if you're interested, Bo texted me a couple weeks ago. He said that his llama rentals are actually doing really robust for this fall. So I don't know if that was a warning of Randy. I don't know if I'm going to have any llamas for you. And maybe you won't, but I think I got a standing order to reserve 4 of them. I better check with him and say, Bo,
before it gets too late.
Yeah, I might be left out in the cold. I'll be using donkeys or alpacas or something, or camera guys.
I'll tell you what, after using llamas a couple times, I don't think there's anything better.
Yeah.
They are the ticket. If you're going to use a pack animal, or if you're going back in and just want to carry a comfortable camp and don't want to have to haul elk out on your back, which I'll be 48 in a couple weeks, which I know I'm not caught up to you yet.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking more ahead than I usually do. It's not that I won't go into those holes after the elk, but I'm thinking before I go in there, is there a better way to get that elk out?
Yeah. Yeah. So anyhow, if I draw, that's the plan. But I've been talking about drawing in Idaho since Noah built the ark, I think, about when I first applied, and haven't had that
since there were only 2 elk in Idaho.
Right. Yeah. Is that where Noah dumped them off?
I guess so.
Off in Idaho?
I mean, it seems logical. I mean, if he didn't, I'm going to have to ask him one day why he didn't. I wish he would have.
Yeah. Well, you could hunt wolves while we're there.
I am all about hunting wolves. Somebody asked me today, you're figuring these wolves out. And I'm like, I wouldn't say I'm figuring them out because they are a smart animal, but I have figured out a few things to at least give me more opportunities. And they're like, do you enjoy it? And I think I wouldn't say I enjoy it as much as elk hunting, but there are aspects of it that are every bit as exciting.
Yeah.
And the chess, you want to talk about chess versus checkers.
Yeah.
Hunting wolves, I think, is chess to, it makes elk hunting feel like checkers.
Yeah, it does. But, if we went there, it'd be like equal opportunity, prey or predator. Well, yeah.
Yep. Yes, please.
No, it would be fun if I drew, but right now I'm doing a lot of e-scouting for my Arizona. Once I drew the Arizona late rifle tag with my son Matthew, I withdrew my Wyoming elk applications. I didn't apply for deer pronghorn in Wyoming. It's like, I must be slowing down and getting old or something, or maybe I can't eat as much meat as I used to. I don't know. But I've really been putting a lot of emphasis on that, and I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty excited about that hunt because of the moisture that's there. Mm-hmm. It's known as a pretty good unit, but I love hunting late season elk.
And is that a December, November?
It starts December 1st.
Yeah.
This year they moved it even a week later, which is going to concentrate the bulls even tighter into their late season patterns. And some Arizona guys are like, where are you at? And I'm like, no, I don't want to, because we get so much heat about units anyhow. Yeah. But there's a lot of canyons there, and everyone is like, well, I know you like to hunt canyons and stuff. Hopefully it's a place with a lot of canyons. It's like, you can almost bet if I applied there, there's a canyon there. So, but I'm not bringing llamas down there.
Yeah.
It's going to be me and Matthew and two camera guys. We're going to be the llamas.
Well, all three of them are younger than you, so.
Yeah.
You can always play that card.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think they'll listen.
You can play the card, but.
Yeah. The one thing is, though, they got to let me do the gutting and gilling. And every guest we have, like on the sweepstakes winners, I'm like, hey, I'm not quote unquote getting anything out of this hunt, but if you really felt like you want to show some, like, if you want to call it appreciation or whatever,
throw me a bone here.
Yeah. Let me do the gutting and gilling. And they look at me like, what?
You want to do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, but that's, hopefully I get to do a lot of gutting and gilling this fall.
I don't know. I love that too. Mm-hmm. I hate packing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't say I hate it, but it's my least favorite part. But I love pulling quarters off an elk and hanging them in a tree and deboning and, pulling the skin off of it. I don't know. It's definitely not easy.
No.
It's not like I like to do it because it's the easy part of it. But
yeah. For me, I think it's just this mental thing where this carcass or this elk goes from being this breathing, living thing that's so fascinating and so amazing to, okay, now it's a carcass and now it's food.
Yeah.
So it's this process within about 2 hours. It goes from that to that.
Yep.
And something I could see myself someday standing along the interstate with the sign, we'll gut and gill your elk. Just let me tag along. That's when I can't do anything else. I can't see well enough to shoot. I'm just going to say,
somebody carry me into the elk and let me cut it.
Yeah. Have knives. We'll travel.
Yeah. I don't know. You end up with too many more scars like that one on your right arm there. Yeah, people might take knives away from you.
Well, I tried to fillet some walleyes this weekend, Corey. And, the way you got to turn your wrist, because that one tendon, they couldn't attach it. And I can't turn my wrist to articulate it that direction. And when I try to, there's no strength there. You should see these fillets. They're the most pitiful looking walleye fillets. If my friends who I grew up walleye fishing with saw those fillets, they'd be like, Randy, quit. You're done. Retire.
No more fishing.
Yeah.
That's how you know when it's time to hang up the fishing pole. When your fillets start looking bad.
It is. And I got back from Alaska in May and I shot a really nice black bear there. And I told Jace and Jim, I'm like, you guys are probably going to have to do the gutting and gilling. Because the doctor told me, don't be doing that with sharp knives with all the weakness in your right hand, or don't use your left hand because you won't have much control over it. Well, I just couldn't resist myself. I'm like, Jace, hold this leg. And I just started and I got through it. it wasn't my best work.
Yeah.
But it's,
You got through it without another scar. So
yeah. A question we got, and a question some guys, I had coffee with them here in Bozeman last week. They drew an archery tag in Montana that could be in the hotter part of September. They asked, well, there's 4 of us going in here, and we're going way the heck in here. We don't want to.
How are we going to get 4 elk out?
That was kind of it. Is how do we take care of the first elk we shoot while we try to kill 3 more, or the first 2 after we try to kill 2 more? And a part of me is like, well, we're going to get the first one killed and worry about it. But it really got into a lot of things about, and we've covered this before, ways to keep elk meat from spoiling in the real heat of it. Fortunately, they said, oh, we've listened to Corey about when the great moon phase is. That's when we're going this year. And they kind of looked at each other like, we know Randy isn't that big into moon phase, but we're going when Corey says to go anyhow.
Fortunately, this year, the moon phase lands during a prime week anyway. So everything's lining up. Yeah.
But they said, we've listened to your podcast and we just have all these questions about how are we going to keep the meat from spoiling. And I told them, the things we always talk about here. And I said, the reality might come down. If you get one of those hot stretches where it's getting in the high 80s, you're probably not going to be able to let that thing hang more than a day.
Yeah.
And you're just going to have to
get it out,
pull the cord and say, one of us has got to eject out of here, or 2 of us have to eject out of here.
Or all 4 of you can get it in one trip, and then everybody's back hunting that afternoon, or depending on how far it is out. But and that's for us. If we're hunting, we'll do that. Be like, hey, whoever shot it's going to have to start shuttling it out, and if we get another one, then the 2 of us can do it. But there's just sometimes where we talk about the importance of getting it cooled immediately, getting the hide off. That initial cooling is so important. Mm-hmm. And then that first night is when you can tell, did it cool down enough at night that it puts the, the little glaze over the meat that you can tell it's going to be okay. It's cool to the touch. Like you put your cheek up against it and it's like, oh, that's cool. I could put my head there and take a nap type of cool.
Yeah.
And if it's not, you got to get it out.
Yeah. And that becomes so much of an issue in archery hunting.
Yeah.
Just because you can get those days. I mean, you can even into October, but in September, it's just an issue. You can't.
Yep.
It's not the issue you want to try to solve. Once you're out there, you got a dead elk and it's 88 degrees. You want to have a plan for that.
You want to know what you need to do.
And the tools and the knowledge way before you ever get out there.
And I had a butcher once. We shot an elk and it was super hot and it was a big elk. And we packed out the hind quarter, left the bone in it, and got in, drove it all the way in there. But it was, I shot it that morning, found it after a couple hours, took us the rest of the day to get it out. It was like 10 o'clock at night before we made it out. And one of the hind quarters had a little bit of bone sour in there. And the butcher told me, hey, if this ever happens again, open that quarter up. Like you don't have to debone it. Just take a knife and slice right down the leg bone all the way to the ball joint. And he's like, I've never seen any meat lost when that's open. I don't care how hot it is. Yeah. Every elk I shoot in September now, if I don't bone it out, I fillet that right down there, prop it open, put a stick in there, 6 inches or so, and lay that open. And within 15 minutes, that bone is cold to touch. Yeah. I've had elk that have been hanging for 3 hours that I open up and it's almost still too hot to even touch that bone. It just retains that heat in there. So the smaller the pieces are, the easier it is for that heat to dissipate. Yep. So if you have to bone it out and hang it on sticks to let it cool, it'll cool in 10 minutes.
Right.
And then you can feel it and be like, okay, I can throw this in a game bag and the heat's gone from it. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, those of us who did take, heat transfer and all these other physics classes, right? The rate of heat transfer is a function to the mass of the object and the amount of surface area.
Yep.
So,
and the differential of temperature.
Yeah.
So if it's colder out, it's going to transfer the heat faster. If it's as hot outside as the inside of that elk,
it's not going to transfer
not
very
moving
fast.
Yep.
So you better have a lot of surface area exposed to make up for that, which is why smaller pieces will cool quicker because the mass relative to the overall exposed surface is way less.
Yeah.
So not to...
Well, if you want to simplify it, take an orange, and when the peel is on the orange, you look at it, how much surface area is there. You can measure that. Well, when you take that orange and peel it and then split it into each of those little wedges, that surface area is just the backside of that wedge initially. Now you've basically tripled or quadrupled it because you've got each of those wedges opened up that are now facing the outside air and exposed.
Why didn't I ever think of using that?
Well, you graduated in accounting. I know you started in engineering, but...
Yeah. Dang. You're like Bill Nye the Science Guy when it comes to this stuff, Corey.
Yeah, I've never been called. I've been, told a lot of things, but I've never been called anything smart.
We get you a bow tie and everything. Bill Nye. Corey Nye, the elk guy.
The elk science guy. I know. But no, it's a huge issue. You have to know what you're doing. And it's not impossible.
Yeah.
You just have to have a plan and stick to it.
Yeah, and the plan needs to be something you've thought about before you went out there.
And it's going to work. Don't just take a bare quarter and throw it in a creek and say, it's cooling off. It's cooling off all right, and the bacteria is growing right there on it. And if you want to know what causes meat to go bad, it's that bacteria that's growing on it.
Another thing I caution those guys is if you do, well, first of all, if you can do it, do the gutless method because your risk of puncturing a bacteria-infested area is way less when you do the gutless method. If you do have a hit that's going to open up some stomach or some gut, don't let that touch the meat.
Yeah.
That is bacteria.
Yep.
And if you have a piece of meat and you're like, I don't want to waste any, I get that.
Yep.
But grabbing something that has been exposed to that bacteria in super warm weather and then putting it in a game bag with all these back straps or a great, hind quarter.
We can go right back to the pee in the pool analogy. It's going to spread. It's going to spread.
That's going to be the title of this podcast.
Pee in the pool.
Pee in a pool. But that's the other thing in warm weather. I mean, you wouldn't want to do it even in cold weather probably, but the negative consequences in warm weather are going to be way more amplified.
Yep.
And that's one
bacteria spreads with heat and moisture. I mean, those are the two things you need to avoid.
Yeah, and that stomach, that gut, that intestine is a bacteria.
You've got a starter plant there that's ready for some fertilization.
And if you don't think there's a lot of bacteria in there, look at why it bloats up really quickly and gets really warm. That's the action of bacteria and everything
growth.
Else in there. So it was good. They got a hold of me a couple days before and they said, here's a list of questions we have for you. And it caused me to kind of think this through. You're going
to think through invitations to coffee next time. Oh, wait a minute. Are we really just going to coffee? Or are you? What's this list of questions?
Well, they had emailed us on the Elk Talk podcast, and I recognized the name.
Wow.
I emailed them. I'm like, hey, Nick, you live in Bozeman. Just stop by my office.
Wow.
And he did. And so super nice guys. And it's fun to help people who are using them as an example. When we met, they had a list of questions, like 3 pages of questions. And the amount of research they have already done. Yeah. This wasn't hey, can you tell me where to kill an elk?
Yeah.
This was...
What's your number one piece of advice?
Yeah, it was none of that. So it's really fun to help guys who are that gung-ho. Yep. They're dedicated. They have already... Their maps, they showed me,
they're not the 10% hunters. I mean, they're not the 10% success rate hunters. That's just the people who put in that time. And I always said it when we were doing seminars. The people who come to seminars... The odds don't apply to them. The averages don't apply to them because they're putting in the time in the off season. They're sponges that want to learn.
Yeah.
They're thinking through this stuff and they want to truly absorb information. They're the ones that are keeping it up above 10%.
Yeah.
You know, it's the people who go out and pull their bow out of the closet on August 29th and like, yep, still on. I hit the pie plate at 10 yards and nothing's changed. And those are the guys that are bringing it down to 10%. And that's great. You know, they're getting their experience out of it. And and we get the fishing game looks at it and says, well, 10% success. This is how many elk we can let Randy and Corey try to kill this year.
I got to try and figure out what I'm doing with Montana for elk. I don't know.
I know a place you could go.
Yeah?
Yeah. About 4 feet of snow, and there's some mountain goats there.
Yeah, I know. There are some wolves up there, though.
Oh, they were howling right outside of our camp a couple nights. Yeah.
There's a pack that's in there, and I've come so close to shooting them at a time or two, but as you saw, there's quite a bit of timber in some of those places, and it's
fairly steep. I bet they can run up the hills a little steeper than we can.
Yeah. They cover a lot of ground way quicker than we do, but it's like they just know.
Yep.
How okay, I'm gonna howl and make some noise here, but he's not gonna find me.
Yep.
So
it's almost like they do it to tease you. Let's run down there and howl at him again. Watch him freak out. He's gonna come running up the hill. His face is gonna be red. He's gonna be puffing out of breath, and we're just gonna sit up here and laugh at him.
Yeah. Hey, Pete, watch this.
Here they come. Just drop over the back of the hill. They'll never make it up here. That's why trapping is so intriguing to me because I let them find the traps.
Yeah.
I don't have to go find the wolves. I just have to put a trap out and let it work 24/7.
Well, that's the beauty of traps. Yeah. They're working on it kind of like a game camera. It's there all the time.
And it's just as exciting. Every time you walk up to that trap, you're anticipating something being in it.
Yeah, it is like Christmas plus.
Yep.
It's like
a trail camera and a trap.
Yeah. Whew. And if you park and then you're walking, a few hundred yards into your set and you see fresh tracks and that's not your heart is just like, oh, I'm sure I got them.
I'll never forget the sound of the chain rattling on that first wolf.
Yeah.
Like walking over the ridge, and before I even saw it, I could hear the chain rattling down there.
And you're like,
I'm like, there's something big in that trap.
Well, we're lucky to live where we do and get to do as much of it as we do. I don't make any apologies for that. I mean, speaking personally, the pay cuts my wife and I took to move to Montana. Well, a legislator one time was like, I can't believe you get this worked up over a $20 elk tag. I'm like, wait a second. Back in 1991, my wife and I combined were making less than $50,000, but we took about a $12,000 or $13,000 pay cut back then. So, it was probably at that time, I'm guessing a combined 30% pay cut. That's how much my resident elk tag is worth to me. Yep. That's why I get so worked up, Mr. Legislator.
That's right.
And I know sometimes you get people say, oh, you guys are so spoiled. And we are.
But there are sacrifices that were made to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And it's, hunting is I didn't move to where I live for hunting. Mm-hmm. I moved there for my family.
Yeah.
But hunting was one of the things that I felt would be good opportunities. And that's just, I think I mentioned I made a little video for Jessie when she graduated and went through pictures from the time she was a month old until the day she graduated, basically. And some of those experiences we had, it was fishing for 5-inch brook trout out of a little pond. It was all these things. But that's the experiences that I moved toward. I made the sacrifices that I did to have those experiences.
Yeah.
And those memories, wouldn't trade them for anything.
Yeah.
And you can't replace them. You can't buy them. They're a blessing, but they come at a cost.
Yeah. No, and it just, I think anyone listening who has made those kind of commitments to it.
Yep.
Today, some guy, the discussion came up about wanting to go elk hunting or being an elk hunter. he said, I really want to do more elk hunting. And I asked him, I said, well, do you want to be an elk hunter? And he looked at me like, what do you mean? I said, well,
do you want to go elk hunting?
Yeah. There's some people who say, I just want to go elk hunting. And there's some people who say, my life path, I want to be an elk hunter.
Yep.
That person who says, this is what I want to be, they're going to work at that craft every day, doing something. They're
going to show up with 3 pages of questions.
Yeah. Or they're going to be working out. They're going to be watching their diet. They're going to be exercising. They're going to be e-scouting. They're going to be researching. They're going to...
shooting their bow.
Yeah. That is the person who is an elk hunter. The guy who says, well, someday I'd like to shoot an elk. Well, he wants to go elk hunting.
Yeah.
And I know one requires the other, but they're not the same.
Nope. And there's nothing, again, it's not one is more rewarding or better. For some people, they just want to go and experience it. And if they shoot one, that's bonus. But that's not, some of us, we lose sleep at night thinking about that tag that's still sitting in our pocket with 3 days left in the season. It's like, all right, this is serious. I've got to figure this out because right now I'm losing.
Yeah. And that's why I think elk hunting is so appealing and so attracting, is it's not as rare as a sheep tag or a goat or moose tag or something. So it is attainable. And it just can, it can grab you and immerse you to a degree that every day, even in the cold of winter or the heat of summer, you can be doing something to hone your craft, to improve your progression down that path as an elk hunter. It's a lifetime thing. It's like you raised your hand and said, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life.
Yep. I guarantee if somebody came up to my wife and said, how would you describe your husband? She would say he's an elk hunter.
Yeah.
He's a mediocre dad. He's a below average husband. He is fair at manual labor. But if you want to describe him in 2 words, he's an elk hunter.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's on his mind every day? Yeah, his family makes it on there most days. And, his this and this, but he thinks about elk hunting every day. Yeah. And he's doing something
towards it.
He's excited about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And those are those people who make that lifetime investment in their elk knowledge, or all the things that are part of what we just described. Those are the ones that are usually in that 10% category of filled their elk tag that year. And there's a lot of guys who have fun, and they're like, I like just going and hanging out and doing it, and that's great.
And I know several people that have quit elk hunting. I can't even fathom quitting elk hunting.
No,
I'm pushing up on 50 years old before too much longer, and I'm thinking I've probably got only 35 years left of elk hunting. And there's some people like, well, I'm going to be 60 next year, so I guess my elk hunting's over. I'm like, I'm just getting started. Like, I'm literally just in the phase where I'm enjoying it because I feel like I'm, not that I understand it or that I know it better, but I think that I know myself better, and I've grown enough to be able to recognize what's important in it.
Yeah.
What success is, and I think that's the difference between where I was 20 years ago and where I am now is, it's about killing elk, but there's more layers to it. Yeah. And those layers are the memories. Yeah. Those layers are the things I remember. Brinker and I did a podcast on David Brinker's Altitude podcast today, and we were just talking about that. And I said, I walked out in my shed the other day, and I have every set of elk antlers I've ever killed, with one exception. The first elk I ever shot, I threw them away, the antlers, after a couple of years. I didn't think ahead, and I've got every other set since then. And they are filling the rafters. And I got thinking the other day, this is a nightmare for my kids. They're going to look at that and be like, we've got to find somebody to buy these, because they aren't going to keep all of those antlers. They might each take one set and say, this is Dad's, the bull that he got excited telling this story. I remember he went to Alaska and shot this bull. I want that set of antlers, in my house. But the other sets, they're just going to get thrown away or sold. And so does it matter how big of an elk I shoot? Does it matter, any of that? It doesn't.
Yeah.
What matters is how excited I got on that hunt and the excitement I was able to share with my kids or who I got to share that experience with. And, you'd asked me that 20 years ago, I'd have been like, I'd give anything to shoot a 400-inch bull.
Yeah.
Now, no, it's not important.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, but I know guys who have, and I'm envious that they've shot those big elk, but it's not the same envy where I'm like, if I got to hunt private land, or if I drew that tag, I'd be able to shoot a bull like that.
Yeah.
I can appreciate what they shot, and then I don't have to compare it to what I shot.
Right.
And that's something I think that I didn't have even 10, 15 years ago.
Really?
Yeah. I think hunting with my kids, having them old enough to hunt with them, really helped establish that.
Yeah.
That it's not a competition with anything. It's not, nobody's going to remember who killed 400-inch bulls. Nobody's going to care about how many antlers you have in your rafters.
Yeah.
What your kids are going to care about is, Dad took us hunting that time.
Right. Well, I hope people listen to that part and think about it, because at this point, for sure, for me, and so many people have said this to me over the last few years, is you just seem like you get as much, if not more fun out of someone else shooting an elk than yourself. And if I had to be honest about it, as much as I enjoy filling my own tag, I'd say that's probably a correct observation.
Especially if it's the right person.
Yeah.
That enjoys it. Even if it's a new hunter, even if it's somebody that's killed 100 elk, I don't care if they have that passion for it.
Yeah.
It's fun to be a part of that, and it doesn't matter who pulls the trigger, who packs the antlers out.
Yeah. Well, I wish I had all the elk antlers from every bull I'd shot. Being a tightwad accountant, the first 5 bulls I shot were all raghorns, one little 5-point. And there was a place in Bozeman, Pacific Hide and Recycle, you used to be able to go sell antlers there.
Yep.
And I think I got enough for like 4 pairs of work gloves or something. I can't even remember what I got for them. But I'm like, I don't need to be dragging these things all along. And now I really wish I wouldn't have, even though they're like 2.5-year-old bulls, but I did.
And that's, it's fun to go out and I can point to each one and I can tell you the full story right where that bull, I could walk back to the blade of grass that bull was standing next to for every one of them.
Yeah.
But they're just antlers.
Yeah.
It's the memory, and it's that, I think what makes the memory so memorable is the way you felt when that happened. And it's not about the size of antlers for me. And for some people it is. And that's, again, it's not saying one's better than the other. But for me, I love the feel I get, especially when I call in an elk.
Yeah.
And that it might be a little 5-point, but when he comes in and screams in my face, we just had a match that I don't care if he was 400 inches or a spike. That was exciting. And that's what I remember as I'm packing that quarterback to the truck is that little bugger came in and rolled his eyes back and screamed at me. And did you see what he did right there at 15 yards? And it doesn't matter how big he was.
Well, you're going to get a kick out of an episode. I should send you a draft. We're just wrapping it up. It's General Elk in Wyoming last year. Me, Bo Beatty, and my buddy Mike Spitzer. So the 3 of us go in, and Marcus and Jace are the camera guys. And Bo's like, well, we'll take 5 or 6 llamas.
Each.
Well, yeah. After he's all done, he's like, well, I don't want to leave him behind. We had so many llamas. We had 11 llamas. And it was a 9-hour hike in there. So I was really glad to have these llamas.
Yeah.
But anyhow, we go in and we scout for 2 days. And the 2 days of scouting was really, really helpful. I mean, we covered a lot of ground, glassed a lot of ground. It's like, boy, this was worthwhile. Opening morning, we split up. Jason and I went one way. Marcus went with Bo and Mike. And, well, we were all together and we heard this bull bugling and they went after it. They're like, man, someone's got to kill that thing. He's big. And it was still dark, but he's just... And so they go out there and about 11:30 in the morning, I get an inReach. Well, we hear a shot, Jason and I, and we're like, huh. And then we get an inReach bull down. I'm like, man, they got him. Holy smokes. So I inReach him. I'm like, I'll go back to camp and I'll water the llamas and I'll, do whatever. We'll meet you guys back there. And they come back to camp. Or Bo does. Mike and Marcus kept hunting. Bo comes back to camp. And he's like, he had a nickname. I can't remember what nickname he gave this bull, but like tough punk, or I can't remember. Anyhow, the idea is to this bull, and in the footage, in the audio, Marcus you can hear him back there just tearing it up, and he walks out, and he's a little raghorn. And Bo had told Mike, you shoot him when he comes out. You shoot him, I'll wait. And he comes out, and Mike looks at the camera like, is that him? And Marcus said that, I said, I don't know. And he bugled out in the open. And Marcus was like, yeah, that's him. And Mike's like, oh man, I don't know if I'm going to shoot him. And Bo stands up. He's like, I need elk meat. Boom. But the point of it is everybody, all of us in the dark sitting there listening to that bull. I thought he was bigger than any bull we'd seen by scouting, the way he was and he was really getting with it and deep. And then he turns out to be a 2.5-year-old.
And really, what would have been the difference if he'd have been a 400-inch bull or a 2.5-year-old bull?
Yeah.
You were just as excited as he's walking out. When you see his antlers, there's a different reaction.
Yeah.
But every other aspect of that hunt is exactly the same.
Yeah. No, Bo was so excited.
Yep.
When Bo came back to camp, he's like, I got him. A little Tuffy, something. He had a name for him already made up by the time he got back to camp.
So I've come to camp and seen a big Tuffy bull that Bo shot one year.
Yeah.
So he deserves both of them.
But the point of that was, one, you never know.
Yeah.
Just by the sound of them, what it is. That was so, I think as a general rule, most times, it sounds like a mature bull.
Yeah.
But don't discount maybe the pipsqueak, or don't put all your chips on the growly one, because it could be one way or the other, the opposite.
I just hung out with a friend over Memorial Day weekend, an old college roommate. And he showed me video of a bull that he called in for his dad last year. And the bugle on that thing it sounded like a spike. I mean, literally, you would have thought that's the first year this bull has ever bugled. Mm-hmm. And it was a 380-inch
oh my gosh,
public land, over-the-counter bull in one of the most heavily hunted, predated wolf areas. I mean, you just look at it, it's like, I can't even believe that animal lived there. And his bugle was just a puny little, so I mean, you don't know.
Yeah.
And then for his dad, he would have probably shot a puny little bull that bugled like that and been just tickled with it.
Yeah.
And, like you say, you're expecting a big one, little one steps out, you shoot it and you're happy. You're expecting a little one, a big one shoots out or comes out, you shoot it, and you're a little more happy.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we had the cameras running on our hike in. I wish we would have. I didn't see it in the footage, but it would have been so prophetic, because we'd stopped and took a break at one time, and Bo said, when I left the house, Kirsten told me, don't come back without an elk. So if you guys pass any, I'm shooting them. It's like 3 days later, that's exactly what happened. And Bo was so excited. I've been looking at the footage of the hunt. It's so much fun. It kind of reminded, because I was the last to kill an elk on that hunt. Mike and Bo both killed opening day, and I was just so excited. And if I wouldn't have shot a bull, I wouldn't have mattered a bit. But I lucked out, and another one decided that he just had to be on video. So and he came in silent. Bo, there was one up on the ridge bugling, responding to Bo, and this guy, I can hear walking, and I'm like, this is getting really close. And I heard some rocks roll. I'm like, is there a bull coming in here? And all of a sudden I look, and he's standing in an opening just looking at bow, 110 yards. Well, with a center fire rifle.
There you go.
If you can't shoot a bull elk at 110 yards with a center fire rifle, it's time to go home. But again, there's just all these little things you go through every hunt, whether it's success like that one or failure or, you know, whatever you want to call it, not filling a tag. The lessons, that encounter right there reminded me, just because you don't hear him bugling on his way in, don't assume he's not around.
Yeah.
And it was a fun one. I'm excited to get that one edited and out on our Fresh Tracks Plus platform. Well, hopefully have some other good hunts this fall.
Yep.
Fingers crossed. And who knows? But any other comments, questions they gave us that we're missing? I know I'm looking at this pages and pages of email comments here. I've got my laptop up, and it says I've got 124 unread messages in the Elk Talk podcast folder here.
Man.
I need to read all of them.
I was going to say, I read them as they come in, because I know if I put them in a folder that they'll slip by. So
yeah, well, I was out at a shooting academy.
I was going to say, you were in Alaska and then out there. And
yeah, but anyhow, folks, really appreciate everybody doing that. And we're here at TAC, Total Archery Challenge. And it's a big deal for RMEF. They're having a big celebration tomorrow. They're having the World Elk Calling Championship. So maybe we should have recorded this tomorrow night.
After
maybe
I may not have been in the mood to record a podcast tomorrow night.
Okay. Well, I thought you were going to win.
Well, you know what? There was and it goes right back to what we just talked about, 20 years ago, that's all that mattered. Mm-hmm. And last year was one of the years that there were so many good callers and so many good people, just beyond being good elk callers. They're just fun people that I'm as competitive as anybody. Yeah. But there's some people I'm okay. If I lose to that person, and now there's just so many people like that, Bo Brooks won last year, and he's been coming for the last, I think, 7 or 8 years wanting to win. And I told him the first year, you'll win. Yeah. You're a phenomenal caller. You'll win. So to see him win and to put in the time and the improvement he's made over the last several years, I truly can say for the first time, I was excited to see him win as I would have been if I would have won. Yeah. Just because he's a good person. And so we're to a point where, I'm still competitive, and that's a good outlet for it. But just about anybody that's in it, if they win, I'm going to be pretty happy for them. Yeah. Which there's been a maturing take place, because it wasn't too long ago that I wasn't as happy about other people winning. And I think it comes from my kids, because I see them and I want them to win. Yeah. And if I had to compete against them, I would step down to let them succeed. Yeah. And so there's, I think I've learned that through being a parent, and it's maybe transitioned beyond just my children, that I can be happy for other people when they're successful, even if that means I might not be able to be as successful in that. So well, it's a great place to be in mentally, and there's still some people that I would like to beat, but there's more people that I'd be happy to see win than what I would like to beat, which hasn't always been the case. So.
Good. The other thing tomorrow night is we got to raise a lot of money for the Elk Foundation. I got to MC the big whoop-de-doo tomorrow night.
What all is that? Is that the auction?
Auction,
dinner?
A bunch of raffles, dinner, some music, the normal run of a big RMEF event.
See, and I just haven't seen the advertising this year on it like in the past. Is there music?
They've got a band or 2 guys coming playing music. They have Tommy, an auctioneer, who is a combat vet who really went through it. I mean, I met him today. He's lost both of his legs and most of one hand in a IED. And he's going to be the auctioneer.
Really?
Yeah, and he's really excited to be the auctioneer. So I'm excited for him. And on the script, there's a whole bunch of Randy and Tommy ad lib. So I don't know what that's going to mean.
They should know you better than that by now.
Yeah.
You do not leave Randy without a script.
Yeah. So
I mean, look at our podcast.
Yeah. If we can raise a bunch of money for him, that'd be great.
Yeah,
because they're going to use it for a great cause. So yeah, it's fun being here this weekend, even if it does snow tonight.
Yeah, we don't have to go out in it.
Well, I guess that's what they call a wrap, eh, Corey?
Right. I think that's good.
How many more the Reaching Your Peak episodes
Man,
you got coming?
We're running that through elk season, so
Okay.
all summer long.
Yeah, people are really dialing into that. A lot of comments.
I'm almost thinking we might need to, you and I, jump on a podcast and have me tell a story so that you can pull more out of it, because you have a way of pulling details and color out of it. Where when I'm just sitting there telling a story, I almost bore myself. So
the audience doesn't seem very bored, Corey.
I know, but there's just an element that you bring to a storytelling that we might have to try one and see how it works.
We'll try one, and see how it goes. And then the audience will be like, "Get that square-headed Finlander out of there. Let Corey tell his story without Randy providing color commentary. He's like a bad football color commentary guy." I wasn't going to say the name of one who's a bad color commentary,
there's
but
a few.
I'd get in trouble for saying that.
Really?
Yeah, their PR firm or attorney would get a hold of me for picking on him or something.
Man, I would think that a person's entitled to an opinion.
Well, yeah, I'd have to qualify it by saying, "In my opinion."
Yeah, there you go.
But anyhow, folks, thanks for being here. Until the next time, I hope you're all doing well and hope summer's going good for you. And it won't be long, Corey. It's going to be
just
archery
over
season.
2 months.
Yeah.
It's coming fast.
I got to get this healed up here.
You told me you've been shooting good, so
I have been, actually. I'm surprised how much easier archery was with all this messed up stuff than rifle.
yeah.
I would have thought it would be the other way around, but the results of my groups say that archery is easier to do with this injury than a rifle.
Yep.
So anyhow, thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.